Do your feet hurt, especially at the end of the day? I'm Chantelle with MyoLab, here to shed some light on the truth behind foot pain. One of the things we run into most when it comes to foot pain is that people will often Google, hey, why do my feet hurt? The number one answer you're going to get off Google is probably plantar fasciitis, okay? That is so common that it's become normalized that everybody has plantar fasciitis or has dealt with plantar fasciitis at some point in their life. And everybody's got a story about their first cousin's dog's co-owner's grandma who has plantar fasciitis. And so when you're trying to figure out why do your feet hurt, you're going to hear these stories and go, yeah, that sounds like my feet. They hurt a lot at the end of the day. Maybe they hurt a lot first thing in the morning. Those first few steps out of bed just suck. And you're going to go, great, I've got plantar fasciitis. You might go to your medical doctor and say, hey, I think I have this. Medical doctor is going to, maybe glance at your feet and go, great, here's your ibuprofen, here's your orthotics, here's your frozen water bottle, go away. That's about the answer that you get. Roll your foot out on a frozen water bottle and wait for it to subside. The truth is, pain in the foot is just like pain anywhere else in the body. It's a response, it's your brain sensing something and going, something is wrong. That might be some inflammation or a structure that's not moving well in the foot. It might be that you stepped on a really sharp rock. Any of that your brain is going to perceive as pain, go, something is wrong. But you've got a ton of different structures, muscles, joints, bones in the foot. Any of them can be causing that foot pain. And so it's actually really important to start to dive a little bit deeper into the feet to figure out why your foot is hurting. Now, step one, the first thing you can do for your feet, honestly, is get them out of your shoes. And actually get them out of your socks. People don't realize just how narrow their shoes and socks actually are and how compressive they are around your foot. Your foot is meant to move, it's meant to breathe, it's meant to sense its environment. Your foot actually has one of the highest densities of sensory neurons anywhere in your body. It's because it's supposed to sense what's going on in your environment and help you respond to it. If you put your foot in a sock and a shoe every single day, especially a shoe that you put on and it's like, oh, it feels like a cloud. That's awesome, it's so comfortable, but you've cut your foot off from its environment and all it's feeling is a cloud, a fluffy structure, and actually an unstable structure. You don't know what's going on in your environment. You don't know what you're stepping on because of your shoe. So get your foot out of your shoe, let it breathe, let it sense the ground underneath it. Now, obviously, being barefoot, especially in a Calgary winter, it's not always the most practical thing. So you can actually buy shoes that are designed to help your feet still sense its environment. That being said, I'm always going to recommend caution around barefoot shoes. If you are somebody who's been wearing a super thick sole, something that's stabilizing, and you go right into a barefoot shoe, it's a recipe for more pain, actually, because your foot isn't strong enough for that. It's not ready for a situation where it's doing all of the work because it's so used to relying on a shoe. That being said, the number one change that everybody can make is finding a shoe with a wide toe box. Now, I don't mean like the whole shoe should be wide, but the space around your toes should be wide so it's not compressing your foot. Anybody who moves into a wider toe box shoe is going to allow for more forefoot splay, your toes literally stretching out, and it's going to help your feet tremendously. That being said, if you want to start to transition towards a barefoot shoe, there's exercises and things you can do to actually build up your foot strength so that you can transition into a more minimalist shoe. So let's talk a little bit about the structures in your feet. So you've got a lot of bones. Between the bones, you've got ligaments. Around the bones, you've got the muscles, okay? You have quite a high number of muscles, joints, and bones actually in your feet and ankles, and each one of those joints is meant to move. Now, you should actually notice that your foot looks shockingly like your hand, okay? The joints are very similar between the two structures, and actually your muscle layers are almost the exact same as well. That means that you've got the opportunity to have the same dexterity with your toes as you do with your fingers. Now, obviously, most people don't have that, and it's because they've been ignoring their feet for most of their life, right? Nobody's been practicing using their toes the way you can use your fingers. But the point is that you have that capability, and so we want to actually build strength in your feet and in those muscles themselves. So between each of the bones, you've got the deepest layer of muscles, and then around all of those, you have more muscles and structures as well. And it's meant to help your foot move in all directions. When it comes to having pain in the foot, the first thing you want to do is actually start to figure out what's going on and start to actually assess your foot. There's two major assessments that you can actually do from home. With these, what we're really doing is checking ankle range of motion and checking the range of motion of your big toe. To assess ankle range of motion, what you're going to do is use a wall and put your foot a certain distance away from it. The starting distance doesn't really matter because what you're going to do is lunge forward and try to touch that knee to the wall. Big thing we want to make sure is that you're not collapsing and your knees coming in. You're actually driving straight over those toes towards the wall. If you can touch the wall, great. Back up your foot and try again. You want to see the maximum distance away from the wall that you can get to and still touch that knee to the wall. Whatever that maximum distance is between your big toe and the wall, that's what you're going to measure. You want that distance to be at least 4 inches or 10 centimeters. To assess big toe range of motion, we want to do 2 things. How far can you lift the toe actively, and how far can you lift the toe passively? Actively, you really just want to see how far up you can get that big toe. Ideally, you want this motion to be 50 to 70 degrees for normal walking cycle, but if you're running and sprinting, you actually need closer to 90. Passively, you're literally just going to bring the big toe, keep it nice and relaxed, see how far up you can lift it, pushing into that range of motion. If you don't have 50 degrees of range of motion lifting up the big toe, or if you're more than 4 inches away from the wall trying to get your knee to the wall, you're going to want to see a healthcare practitioner who specializes in feet to figure out what's going on limiting that motion. Now that we've gone through some assessments, let's go through a few things that you can do to actually build strength in your foot, starting with the short foot exercise. So for this exercise, you're going to be focusing on 3 spots. The center of the heel, ball of the foot underneath the big toe, ball of the foot underneath the little toe. Those 3 spots connected to the ground are your stable tripod. Then what you're going to do is, without lifting the toes or scrunching them or really engaging the foot or the shin at all, you're going to tend to the foot, squeezing those 3 spots together, lifting the arch through there. Again, the contraction really happens in through here. It shouldn't be happening in your toes or in your leg. It's just a little bit of motion, a little bit of activation for the intrinsic foot muscles. Once you can hold that contraction without any cramping in your foot or anything like that, we're going to move on to toe yoga, which is isolated toe movements. What you're going to do is hold that short foot contraction and then practice lifting up just the big toe. Put it down, lift up just the other 4 little toes. Then you're going to do that reverse. Lift them all up, put down the big toe, and put down the little toes. It's pretty common for feet to cramp in this position, especially if you're not used to doing these exercises. If that happens, relax the foot, shake it out, and then start again. I mentioned that being barefoot all the time isn't necessarily practical, which means we have to be in shoes. And for a lot of people, it means we have to be in narrow shoes, or you might need to be in a steel toe. One of the things you can do to help your feet recover from being in shoes is called foot love, or basically you're going to hold hands with your feet. In this position, you're going to lace your fingers between your toes. Now, depending on how long your toes are or how big your fingers are, you may not be able to get your fingers all the way down to the bases of your feet. That's okay. Put them where it's comfortable. Once your fingers are between your toes, you're going to move your foot through its ranges of motion, flexing and stretching out the ankle here, and then also rotating around this axis in the midfoot as well. This is really designed to limber up the foot and stretch the muscles that end up really contracted when we wear shoes.
Yeah.
Once the foot is limber, come back into a neutral position, and then I want you to imagine squeezing your toes together around your fingers. It's not the finger squeezing, it's actually the toes that engage, and you can actually get activation of the deep muscles in between your toes. Like I said, this is a great thing to do every day after you take off your shoes. If you're finding you've still got some areas of muscle tightness, maybe you found some spots when you were doing the foot love exercise that were really tight, you can actually help loosen those up with a lacrosse ball. To do this, you're going to put the lacrosse ball on the ground and rest your foot on top of it. Roll your foot around until you find the spots that are tender. Maybe it's a 5 out of 10, maybe it's a 10 out of 10. Find the spots that are tender, put a little bit of pressure on it, and hold that until the tenderness releases. If you feel like you need to activate it a little bit more, you can actually move your toes around while you're holding that pressure. You'll find that it gets a little bit deeper into those muscles. This can take quite a while to actually release those muscles. So, spend 3 to 5 minutes actually rolling the bottom of your foot. Don't be afraid to just hang out on that until the tenderness actually does decrease. The lacrosse ball is a really great way of loosening up the superficial muscle layers. If when you're doing that with the lacrosse ball, you kind of wish it could get a little bit deeper, you can do the same thing using a golf ball. So golf ball on the floor, same thing, roll the foot around, find the spots that are tender. You'll notice that the golf ball inherently gets a little bit deeper into the muscle layers than the lacrosse ball does, so it may be a little bit extra tender. You can moderate that just by putting less pressure through the foot. You can even get in a little bit more into the arch of the foot, find the spots that are tender, hang out on them with some pressure. If when you're doing the exercises, you found that it was really hard to actually feel like any of the muscles were activating, you didn't actually feel like your brain could connect to your foot, you can help mitigate that by rolling the bottom of the foot on a textured ball to help wake up the sensory neurons. Now the difference with this one is you actually want to roll quickly and with quite a bit of pressure. So you're going to go like this for 30 seconds or so, waking up the bottom of the foot, sending lots of sensory information to the brain so that it's just more aware of that part of your body. Once you've done that, go right into that short foot exercise and see if it's a little bit easier to activate those small muscles. As a summary here, when you're dealing with foot pain, one of the things to figure out is what's going on with the foot. Is it compensating for something? Did you step on something? Or is there something going on between the structures where things aren't moving because we've spent too long in shoes? A healthcare practitioner who has a little bit extra training, maybe specializes in treating feet, can be super helpful to help pinpoint what's going on and direct a treatment plan to help get rid of your foot pain. Thanks for watching.